Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Rockville and Gaithersburg. And I'm really delighted to welcome you to this episode of Kibbitzing with Kagan. My special guest today is Jennifer Bevan-Dangel, a well-known presence in Annapolis, who is now the Maryland State Director of the Humane Society of the United States. Jennifer, thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Thank you so much for having me today.
So I appreciate that you have actually seen kibitzes before, so this will be extra fun and not as many surprises perhaps. So you have had a wonderfully long career in advocacy. Tell us, if you would, how you got started, how you wanted to make that your career path.
It goes way back when I was very young. My mother took me to a rally actually about animal issues in Annapolis. And I believe I was about 7 at the time. And I remember just how exciting everything felt, having the crowd and the State House, being in Lawyers Mall. And I think it sparked something that just stayed buried within me as I went through my educational track.
That's fantastic. So we're going to get into where you've worked, because you've worked on some of the most important issues. But curious, have you ever thought of running for office yourself?
I have very briefly thought about it. I have so much respect for the men and women who have the stoicism, the fortitude to make that plunge and that commitment. But I like being the gadfly on the outside. So I'll stay back here, telling everyone what they ought to do.
That's awesome. So Jennifer, you have worked for some of the most important and influential advocacy organizations in Maryland. So from the Thousand Friends of Maryland to Common Cause, to Advocates for Children and Youth, and now to the Humane Society. Tell us how you pick which groups and which causes really motivate you and make you want to work there and invest your time.
I feel like I'm always searching for that one lever where if we could move this one issue, it would fix all the world's problems. And I've almost come to accept that there is no magic bill that is going to solve everything, but it hasn't stopped me from looking. I majored in environmental studies in my undergrad, and so environment was always where I thought I would spend my whole career. And the land use connection, developers contributions to campaigns drew me to Common Cause, because I thought, well, if we could fix money in politics, we could fix a lot of these issues. But then the voting rights work drew me into the Advocates for Children and Youth, because I realized, well, really, we need to be investing in the people who make up our democracy. And then sort of with COVID and all the other life crises, when the position with the Humane Society became available, animals have always been my personal passion. And I've always told people, you can't lobby an issue in Annapolis that you care about too deeply, because you can't stand to watch the process if you're deeply personally invested in the outcome. But when it came the opportunity to work with the Humane Society of the United States, I thought, I'm going to violate my own #1 rule, and I'm going to try. I'm going to see if I have the fortitude to work on an issue that's very central to me. So far, so good, but mostly because thanks to your leadership and others, we had a very good year last year.
Well, let's talk about that. What was it like to lobby during COVID when you couldn't actually come and knock on our doors?
It was an adventure I hope to never repeat.
Amen.
I told everyone it was 5 times the work for a 1/5 of the fun. And the best part about Annapolis, the personal connection, sharing information, sharing, I don't want to call it gossip, because they're very important updates with, different members and different lobbyists. With all of that gone, it felt very disorienting. It almost felt like, was there a session at all? But luckily, the work still paid off. You all turned up and did an incredible job. And we did have some truly stupendous victories for the animals. So all's well that ends well, as long as we never do it again.
Right. So 5 times the work for 1/5 of the fun is brilliantly stated, actually. As an extreme extrovert, I so desperately missed hugs and meetings and events and being able to connect with colleagues, with advocates, with constituents. And we just sat in our office. And when we weren't in the office, we were on the Senate floor in these plexiglass phone booths or aquariums, or in our committee room, divided by plastic. It was brutal. I mean, but all 47 of us stayed safe, our staffers stayed safe, and thanks to the leadership of President Ferguson, we got through the 90-day session, but it was hard.
I know, just a little anecdote, normally during session, I don't have to work out because I easily get my 10,000 steps chasing after you and everybody else. And I used to be very fit, transitioning to sitting at a desk at 8 a.m. and standing up maybe at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
I was getting 200 steps a day. And I thought, this is so bad.
Yeah, problem. So I have so many questions for you. Tell me, as an advocate, and as an advocate for good guys, you're not, you don't have the highly paid core of people behind you or alongside you. What's the biggest tip? What helps you to be most successful?
Really networking, not just with the people who are on your side of an issue, but even with the people who might be opposing your bills, because it's so important to understand where they're coming from. Are they just representing this issue because some national person is paying them to represent it? Or is there a real Maryland constituency that we do need to consider? And the esprit de corps really keeps you motivated for those 90 days, especially when you're in a small shop. And some of my organizations, it's been, just me and one or two other people. So you need that networking.
Absolutely.
The best story, I worked for 1,000 Friends. We were almost never on the same side as the home builders for probably obvious reasons.
Obvious reasons, yes.
Smart growth. We didn't always see eye to eye. When I left and went to Common Cause, my suite mate was the lobbyist for the home builders. And it would have been incredibly awkward for the
next
years of my life. But we'd always had a very collegial relationship, and we shared tips and updates. And that's really how Annapolis gets things done.
Agreed. So let's pivot to the Humane Society and animals. Talk, if you would, let's start with COVID and animal adoption, and then lately animal returns. Can you talk about that trajectory?
We're seeing a lot of interesting changes in the adoption patterns. What I think happened was you saw almost 3 years worth of adoptions happening last summer, because everybody who maybe had considered it or would have done it went out and adopted a pet.
Yep.
But the downside to that is most people who might this year be considering an adoption, their home's already full in their, or in their opinion. There's always room for one more, but they think their home is full.
Right.
And unfortunately, we are beginning to see surrenders and returns to the shelters as people get back to work, as people's schedules change. The other looming threat that is causing us a lot of concern is with evictions and the moratoriums lifting, that we'll see pet owners forcibly separated from their pets because they can't find pet-friendly housing. They can't afford egregious pet deposits. So our shelters are full, and many of our shelters are at capacity right now. We are worried about even more animals being returned, and the adoption demand is not there the way it normally would be. So we are really at a difficult point for our shelters, and we're hoping that they don't have any COVID issues that make their operations even harder than they already are.
Oh my God. So it's devastating to think about someone not only losing their home, but having their pet forcibly separated. I remember Hurricane Katrina. One of the real traumas was people losing their pets, getting separated from their pets as the people were rescued off their rooftops or something, but they couldn't find their dog or cat or something. Why don't you say a little bit more about what sort of services you provide?
So the Humane Society of the United States, my role is mostly just policy and advocacy, but we work with amazing shelter partners across the state. And what has impressed me the most about the resilience and the thoughtfulness of our local shelters, they have started to seek fosters for temporary housing situations and really responding to this emerging need. So for example, the Maryland SPCA, you might have heard there was a gas line explosion last spring, and a woman was displaced who had 3 dogs. 2 of them were pit type dogs, which sometimes face breed restrictions with housing that comes available. Yes. Maryland SPCA found fosters for her dogs just until she could find housing that would allow them. So she didn't have to go homeless to keep her pets. She didn't have to surrender her pets. She was able to eventually be reunited.
Wow.
Barks has done a lot of similar work with people facing evictions specifically. Barks is the Baltimore Animal Rescue and Care Shelter. I hope I got that acronym.
That was good.
And they've started a foster program just for people facing evictions. So we are seeing our shelters step up with incredible resilience, but we don't think the burden should solely rest on what are often understaffed and under budgeted shelters. We really need to see a more coordinated response, starting with keeping evictions protections in place.
So let's talk about, there are no-kill shelters and there are those that euthanize when they get too full. Why don't you talk about the Humane Society of the United States and their attitudes towards that?
We certainly understand how complicated the situation is on the ground. We work closely with many partners who are smaller. They can choose how many dogs or cats they bring in. And so they're able to stay at a capacity where they're never put in that really difficult position. And we're so happy they're doing the work they're doing. We also see groups, Barks is the largest intake shelter in the state, that for capacity, for the health or behavior concerns with these animals, sometimes have to make really hard decisions. It is important to know that if an animal is facing a medical condition that simply can't be fixed, or a behavioral issue that does make them incredibly dangerous in the community, a forever life in a shelter is not the right answer for that animal. So we really think our shelters are doing incredible work, and the euthanasia rates are dropping drastically across the state. And that's a testament to how hard shelters are marketing. Social media has done some good. Facebook, all those Facebook posts of the adorable pet or the pet wearing a hat, it works. So adoptions have increased, and we're really happy to see that.
So if someone has been musing about adopting a pet, what's the process they should consider using, and what sort of background or interview or cost should they anticipate?
This is another place where every shelter is different. So I'll speak to some of my personal preferences, having adopted a whole suite of pets, 2 of whom are in this room with me. Working with one of your open intake shelters, with your county shelter, is probably the most impactful way that you can save a life. Because again, those are the shelters that have to always say yes when someone shows up at the door with a pet. And so they're often the most under-resourced and sort of overworked. So that's a wonderful place to start. But there's also great services like petfinder.com, where you can type in the exact type of pet you're looking for and see all the options. So, certainly cast a wide net. You want this pet to be a family member, and you, Senator, know more than anyone how deeply you can fall in love with these arrivals into your home. We're so sorry for your loss, but the shelters themselves.
So the goal, Jennifer, is me not crying on this Zoom. But for people who don't know, I adopted a Corona kitty, is what I called him, and actually drove up to Philadelphia to adopt him from a street litter. And he was just beautiful and loving and wonderful and a real joy, and got drastically sick in one day. It went from totally healthy to needing to put him down after just 15 months old, which is devastating. So, but he had a good life for 14 months with me.
And I won't make you cry. So I'll go back to the question. But even that short time, it's a gift. It's a gift we give animals, and it's a gift they give us.
Yes.
But your adoption fees will be all over the map. I will say, for anyone thinking of adopting, right now, a lot of our shelters who are full are, adoption fees are waived, help us empty the shelter. Yes. So it's a good time. And certainly always try to adopt, don't shop.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of animals looking for forever homes who need you.
Amen. Before we pivot again, can you just say a little more about fostering and what that's like? Is there a minimum and maximum period of time? Can fostering lead to adoption? How does that work? And again, I know that it's different everywhere, but if you can give our viewers some idea.
Fostering is a wonderful option for people who might, like my husband's a teacher, so we've been talking about fostering in the summer. He's not quite convinced yet. But if you're home in the summer, or vice versa, you love to travel in the summer now that travel is back as an option, but you maybe are home more in the winter. So fostering can give you the chance to have a pet for a brief while, either until it gets adopted or with some of these new programs until the owners find permanent housing. So you get to love on this animal without the forever commitment that maybe you're not ready for.
Right.
There are many foster fails, and what that means is the person fell so in love with the pet that they ended up adopting. So it's not really a bad thing to fail. I have a personal feeling that foster fail is more common than truly returning the pet, which I think is why my husband's smart enough not to say yes too quickly to us becoming a foster family.
Got it. So there was, I don't want to ignore a baby elephant in the room here, which was there were some challenges and scandals at the Humane Society of the U.S. Can you just speak to that? I'm sure that you are aware of it. If you can just talk about that briefly.
Yeah, so nonprofits, are always an interesting world. You have a board of directors who isn't as hands-on. I don't know that's that different than a big corporation either. And so leadership, if you have good leadership, it's great. And if you have leadership that maybe doesn't align with your values, it can be very, very difficult. I'm so grateful. I came in under the leadership of Kitty Block, who is the current director of the Humane Society of the United States. And she has been leading truly transformational work within the organization, culture change, having a diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation that's really led to some important policy changes and internal changes in how we hire and operate, and also a whole wave of strategic planning that is making our work so much more impactful. Sometimes when you work at the state level, you think, well, how much impact did I make? But when you know that the same effort is being done in other parts of the world, in the US and internationally, you feel like, oh my goodness, this policy reform will ripple out and affect so many lives. So under her leadership, we are really taking on the biggest challenges.
Good. So I want to, before we get to our Fast Five, I want to talk about your legislative priorities for 2022. You and I had a Zoom and you laid them out for me. For those who might be interested in knowing about them and maybe even speaking out on behalf of the key issues you'll be looking at, why don't you lay those out for us briefly?
I'll try to be brief. We have an ambitious agenda. We are looking at, what hasn't passed in the last 4 years and what can we really just get done. So the legislators can go home. Name one. All right. So
no. Run them through. Go ahead. Issue number one.
Bringing back the bill to ban wildlife trafficking in parts and products. This is ivory, cheetah skins, giraffe pillows, making sure that these endangered and threatened animals are not becoming more endangered because Marylanders are buying their pieces. A lot of work around companion animals, banning the cruel denuckling process that's called declaw, but it's really removing the last part of the cat's toe, and getting this shelter for dogs in extreme weather bill across the finish line. It's been a 10+ year fight just to define adequate shelter. We're also looking at some evictions protections because of what we fear is coming, making sure owners are not separated from their pets simply because they need a place to live. And then we're watching closely what is happening in New Jersey with protecting farm animals from the cruelest confinement practices. New Jersey is the closest state that's debating the bill, but it's moving in many states across the country. So banning gestation crates for cows and veal crates for veal, where these animals can't even turn around. So really looking at some of these cruelest practices and seeing if we can't get the job done.
Good job. That was quick.
That was quicker than I normally am, and you know me.
I know you. So I am pleased to share with you here news that my staff and I just had a staff retreat and went through, I think, 71 bill ideas as we start to narrow down. And I am here to announce that I am willing to be the Senate sponsor for the denuckling bill next year.
Oh, that is so fantastic. I could not be more excited. This is such a barbaric practice, and Maryland banning this will save lives. So, thank you. That is so exciting.
We will talk more about that, but I look forward to working with the wonderful delegate, Laura Charkoudian, in getting that done this year. So we'll have lots of work before us on that, but I think we ought to see if we can get that done.
Fantastic.
Yay. So let's pivot to my fast five. I have so many
I
notes.
can't focus now. Not after that excitement.
All right, so the fast five, as you know, are quick questions for people to get to know a little bit more about you. So first off, question number one, what was your favorite Olympic sport?
Equestrian. So I ride, and it was really fun to watch especially the eventing portion. Incredible representation by so many different countries and just really amazing horses.
Fantastic. Question two, what is a new hobby you picked up during COVID that helped you stay sane?
Chickens. We have backyard chickens now, and they are so much more cute and fascinating than I could watch them for hours, which I never would have thought was possible.
One of my interns has chickens, or used to have chickens. I'm not sure which, but she's a chicken person. Okay. Question three, and thanks to my interns for coming up with some of these cool ideas and new questions. If you were given an extra $1,000 to spend on yourself, what would you buy? Or how would you spend it?
More puppies.
More puppies.
Don't let my husband hear that.
you're on brand there. If you had an extra hour granted to you every single day, how would you spend it?
Outside, definitely. Probably training for a full marathon again, which I haven't done in forever, mostly because I don't have that extra hour.
There you go. And the last question, Jennifer Bevan-Dangel of the director of the Maryland office of the Maryland State Director of the Humane Society of the United States. I got to say it right. What is your hidden secret superpower? What is something you're really good at that most folks can't do?
I don't shy away from a challenge. I always get excited when someone throws something at me. I'm always thinking, well, what would it take to do that? So I never think, oh, I can't. And I think that's led me to do some ridiculous things, like a half Ironman that I never had any business attempting to do. And it's led me to take on some crazy policy campaigns too. Like, of course we can win that fight. Why not? But I'm always up for a challenge.
Well, that's a great superpower for an advocate like you to have, and so that's terrific. Jennifer, it's been fun working with you with all your various different hats. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for standing up on the challenging and important issues. Thanks for all you do every day.
Oh, thank you. And I'm so excited to work together on banning deknuckling of cats. It's going to be a great campaign.
Good. Well, stay safe. I look forward to seeing you in person in Annapolis before too long. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.